since 2008, which was really when the ground, I think it was probably winter of 2007 that the ground really got broken. But since that time, over 20 amazing spaces have been created at Wellfield. And that has been really only possible through the vision of leaders such as yourselves and others in this community. We estimate, and record keeping, as Tom Pletcher will attest, in the early stages was not the best. And we estimate the total investment at the garden thus far is around $10 million in private funds. It is unheard of, I think, especially for me and my experience in the not-for-profit world, to see something come to fruition, still growing obviously, but to see something come this far in this short a period of time is nothing short of astounding to me. So that $10 million has gotten us to the point where we are now at a $1 million operating budget on an annual basis, just shy of it this year. And we've come in, just to give you a sense of scale, since I started at Wellfield in 2015, we came from about a $360,000 budget to now $1 million budget. And we've added several gardens in that time. There was a lot of building immediately before I got here in 2012 to 2014. Oops. Sorry, let me make sure. Turn this down. Andy, text me if anything is needed. Okay. So we're going to move toward our final phase of development of that master plan. Again, that master plan envisioned about 25 different garden spaces. We have a 36-acre garden, 18 of those are water. We've covered a lot of that space in really beautiful features, thanks to a lot of generous folks in this community and in this room. What we need to finish it off with is about a 10,000 square foot visitor center, as well as an open air pavilion, which I'll describe a little bit better, to welcome guests for the years to come, and also a couple of different amenities. So I would move forward here.
We're not seeing the slides. There we go. Thank you.
Those who created that master plan, I think, did a pretty good job. And if you've been involved at Wellfield, you know that they've been very, very true to that master plan. It was one of the things that attracted me to move from Southern California, having been in gardens for about 15 years, understanding that, one, a garden that was created from the beginning with a master plan is a real special treasure. That doesn't happen. I came from two other gardens that had been historic, 60 and 75 years respectively. And to see master plans sort of added on in pieces made for a cool garden, but at the same time, it wasn't given this, this was just an amazing template for success that was created thanks to the thoughtfulness of those folks. I don't know that anyone really foresaw the attraction that it would be in a relatively short amount of time. And we throw this number around 75,000 per year. 5 years ago, we know that was a little over 20,000. This last year, it was certainly well above 75,000, because in the month of December for holiday lights, we had over 25,000 people come to Winter Wonderland Holiday Lights over 17 nights. We struggled with weather early on in that, but we recovered, and it was a tremendous attraction. During my vacation away, I visited 2 different holiday light experiences at gardens that are, one garden that you might have heard of is called Missouri Botanical Garden. It's a little place in St. Louis. It's got a small endowment of, like, I don't know, 500 million or something like that. It's an amazing place. They do holiday lights. I saw it. I got some ideas. I still think in terms of bang for your buck, and especially I believe now strongly that we're undercharging for people to come to our event. Or what would probably be what the board would say is you're not charging correctly for how much you're spending, because it's not an inexpensive event. We're very well supported by sponsors, but it really pays to have that many people coming through. But we've got some good ideas. So that 75,000 visitors per year is a low, it's kind of a low estimate ballpark number that we throw around. So here is a bit of our master plan that has come from, or excuse me, some of the overlay of the new features that came from the existing master plan. And there's really four main parts to this expansion. So the first part is right up here. It's that open air pavilion. You can see it. It kind of looks like a kite. It kind of looks like an insect as well with a tail. It's really got some neat design features. And that's right up here. The second part is a 10,000 square foot visitor center in this area. And really for reference, those of you who know that pond right there, it's called Swan Pond. It's right at the very western end of that and takes up about 40 feet of the existing pond. The 10,000 square foot footprint, it's not as big as I think we've made it appear with the design concepts that we've had. And phase 3 is additional parking, about 125 spaces in this area. And I'll give you a little reference. The existing visitors cottage is right about there where that little blue triangle is. It's a triangle, rectangle. That's why I don't do these drawings. That's with the existing visitors cottage, and the plan and part 4 of this project is actually moving that, relocating it down to this area. Although in more recent discussions with the city, and I think this was based on early discussions where this little area right between those two big tanks, those are the two big water tanks that you're seeing there, the two white circles, that was sort of no man's land. We weren't really sure if we could build anything. We've had discussion with them since, and it's likely that we will actually be able to move that visitor's cottage. This is what it looks like when I do drawings. I pencil things in there, but we'll probably move that visitor's cottage to that location. It will serve a bit more of a purpose for us and makes a lot more sense from just an operations standpoint. So with that new visitor center and the open air pavilion, we really wanted to capture bringing the outdoors in year round. And that's one of the key needs that we have at Wellfield and our community needs. You would be shocked the number of inquiries we get for rentals for private events, whether they're weddings, receptions, memorial services, from people who ask us in September for a January event, or a February event, or a March, or an April, or even something in August. And I think they're obviously, they think, as a lot of botanic gardens do, that we have indoor space. We do not. We are very good at being adept and adapting to different situations. We use a lot of tents. A lot of our events use rented tents, which can be cool, but are kind of a pain in a lot of ways. To have this year-round space, to be able to operate and function as a visitor center throughout the year is just something that we are really licking our lips to be able to fulfill for folks. It just opens up so much more. That winter travel, you've got people coming in on buses who are needing spaces, who are looking for programs. That is what we'll be able to do. And we're going to do that through a beautiful building that when you're looking at it, this is sort of looking at from the volunteer garden area, just right where, almost where the Rotary 100-year centennial, or our club's plaque that we put in there in 2017. This is sort of looking back to the west at the end of that pond, and that is what you'll see. But you can see that huge window that Eric Amped is looking forward as a volunteer to getting up there with a pressure washer and a lift to get up there and clean. And that is intended to show these views of that garden throughout the year, because no one would disagree. It is a beautiful space throughout the year. We've got a welcome center, rotunda, a cafe, a little gift shop. The cafe, by the way, I hesitate using that word. It's more of a grab and go sort of thing. This is not a cooking kitchen. It takes a lot more guests per year than we are currently able to provide to sustain something like that. We'll have, of course, new restrooms, a boardroom, which is actually going to be celebrating David Gunlack. Many of you know him. He's really, I'd say, putting it lightly, made an incredible shot in the arm to our community through his extremely generous gift to the Community Foundation. And that boardroom will actually also showcase a bit of his artwork as part of his collection as well. That open air pavilion adjacent will accommodate guests for special public events, private events. Think about concerts that we have in the summer. We're always rolling the dice with weather on those things. And yeah, the band is covered. We sometimes have another little tent where the cafe is, and Navarre is there serving stuff. This will be, there's a no-brainer. If it looks like it's going to rain, we'll have this event in that outdoor space. It'll be covered and protected, and we'll be able to tell people that they can come and be assured that they will not be getting soaking wet. We do try to tell people that we have a tent now, but as you can imagine, the messaging is challenging. This is a plan view of what that building looks like. You can see that gathering space off there to the west, the left as you're looking at it. It connects, that's sort of the lobby for 3 different event spaces, each one of them just a little over 1,000 square feet. So you're looking at about 3,000 square feet of event space. This has been pared down from the initial design that we had. It's been interesting, and I know nothing about construction or architecture. Learning about these things over the years and how they've come and changed in form. If you saw some of the early drawings of this, one, it was actually in a circular shape to sort of emulate that big water tank, but it had a lot more event space. Well, a lot's happened since 2005 in Elkhart County. And as you know, there are a lot of event spaces. We're sitting in one of them right here that would be a competitor. We know that ours will be unique, and it will be done the Wellfield way, which is world-class and homegrown. But paring that down a little bit and realizing that a lot of folks who come to Wellfield, they come because they want to be outside. Our event coordinator, Carla Beasley, who some of you have met, she has an interesting job, and I never used to envy wedding coordinators. And if any of you have known a person, or sometimes there's a term. Have you heard the term bridezilla? I don't use that term very often. We don't have those, because there's something about people coming to Wellfield that they expect. They have a different expectation of their experience, and part of that is being organic. It's being outside. A lot of them don't mind if it rains, but a lot of them would prefer not rain on them if they had the chance. And so that's why we, again, having these event spaces for a reception, not having to put up a tent, which has its own challenges, and being able to have that open air pavilion adjacent to it, it's just north of this, will be really critically important. You can see that rotunda on the right-hand side, sort of the central, and look at the lines. And I'm sorry, I don't really have any way to do a mouse on this that you can probably see at home. You might be able to see it here. But you're looking at this view at all as you enter from this little area right here from the parking lot, the new expanded parking lot. You're going to be looking right down and out into that garden. We want it to be a transformational experience. The real reason I went to Missouri Botanical Garden while we were in St. Louis was they are currently building a new visitor center. Granted, it's $50 million. It's got a little bit bigger of a footprint than ours, but it was really neat for me. I was interested in seeing how operationally they function while they're building this. And it gave me some really good insight. But ours, it as a smaller package, it is going to be something that is absolutely amazing and really these visitor centers for us, it's meant to create that experience and enhance the overall experience. It's not just a place for restrooms and a place to sit down. It's meant to say you are at Wellfield Botanic Gardens. You'll know it as soon as you walk in. We've got that little gift shop area here on the lower right, a few office spaces. This is not a substitute or does not intend to serve as the administrative offices. We will be doing that separately along the way, but it will offer some volunteer space that's a little more centralized, and I should say an indoor space that we do not have right now for volunteers for orientation. Simple things, just having a volunteer break room. Those are all things that we really are lacking very much right now, but just great views. Each of these has outdoor access. You see these patios on the north and south sides. We've set this up so that during special events, we can actually funnel people out and around. They don't have to go through. Here is where that boardroom is. It's about 450 square feet. There's a little 3D art showcase right here. We're not exactly sure what that means, but we think we could put three-dimensional things in there, like sculptures, in addition to paintings and other artwork that we have on the walls. This will be a separate space that can actually be locked off. We're looking at it as a bit of a cross between a gallery space and a boardroom, but I think it just makes a lot of sense. And working with the foundation, who was so generous in this to make this happen, is really exciting. So that's where I get to always the more challenging part for me is when I'm meeting with donors is asking for money. I'm not a salesperson, but what I can tell you is that the space that we're going to create is something that will fundamentally change and enhance the way that we do business at Wellfield. Our total that we're looking for is around $15 million. We're allowing $6 million for that 10,000 square foot visitor center. Of course, the outdoors has to have landscape. We're looking at about $3 million for that open air pavilion. We're allowing $2 million for the parking expansion. Parking lots are not cheap, man. You'd think, throw down a little gravel, little concrete. Well, again, we're working on the well field, so things have to be done a little bit differently. We are really bummed, though. We will not be able to have porous surfaces. So a lot of new things that are being built around town, you notice porous asphalt that actually helps drain because we're on the well field. And I don't know if we haven't exhausted all of our options in terms of how to do this, but do it to satisfy the city's environmental requirements. Unfortunately, we just can't have that stuff draining right through, which is what you'd normally want to do because that helps take the pollutants out of it and it doesn't put it into the waterway. Well, this ultimately, it's sort of in the water. It's right there. We are the well field. We need to relocate the cottage. That cottage, we estimate, has served well over 500,000 people since it was built and put in place in 2013. It has always been intended to be portable. Many of you know that. It will be relocated and repurposed. It just won't have thousands of people going through it on a nightly basis anymore during holiday lights or things like Taste of the Garden. So we also are going to acquire a little bit more property to help with our expansion, not something that we do something with. And for the sustainability part of it, we're going to add in $3 million to put in our endowment with the foundation. So I just want to emphasize, and there's the view looking from the parking lot, not from Main Street. That's a little further away, but this is that view looking out to the west. I'm so happy with the way this came out. We worked with Arcos Design over in Mishawaka. They did an amazing job in doing design charrettes and meetings with our team and with our board and other interested volunteers to help us really create something that we will need. And I should mention, and right now we are of that 15 million, we're well over 50% of the way to that. So you all, as our good friends, we're still considering you are sort of our silent phase audience right here. This was initiated by a fellow Rotarian, Marley Ritson, who now lives in Florida. Many of you know his wife Laura was one of the first on the board of the foundation, passed away recently. It was just several months before she passed away that we got a call from Pete McCown, who had spoken with Marley, and they wished to make this a very sizable donation to help initiate this process. And since that time, we've had several other very generous donors step up, helping us get to that sort of that critical momentum that we needed to move forward, and we're very excited about moving ahead. We are looking at finishing the capital campaign late this winter or spring, and possibly, we know that construction is a challenging thing right now, but to have, maybe even something started this fall or winter would be an amazing accomplishment. And, looking at 18 to 24 months to build, this is something that will be an Elkr treasure plus, because you've already made it an amazing treasure. This just will add to that level of awesomeness, to use a real fancy architectural word. Any questions? Happy to answer them. This was, again, not originally on our schedule, but I wanted to share it with you. I realized as I gave this, Julie is working on doing programs, and I thought I'd better take advantage because we're not going to get the chance because she's filling everything up so quickly. I saw a question. Aaron.
The expansion, it shows like the parking lot and the visitor center, and that looks like it's where we currently do Taste of the Gardens. Where would something like that happen in the future?
Yes. Next question. Yeah. No. There's we're gonna have to be creative, and some of the things that we've done and we've actually tossed around. We didn't do it last year, but we were actually thinking of doing stuff around the garden. There's still a lot of space. This garden is meant with all those different event spaces. Like, think of the island garden. Think of the future celebration garden. This doesn't finish what we have. You'll see a little bit in our marketing things. We talked about a final chapter. I like to think of this as the garden is, of course, never done ever. So we like to talk about this as sort of the final chapter in this volume before we continue to grow. But we've got a few more things. Also want to clarify, and Aaron, it's a great question. We don't have the perfect answer. We know that we're pretty good at making this stuff happen. Oh, I'm sorry. And Aaron's question was, what about Taste of the Gardens? It looks like the footprint of the building is right where we do the artists, and that's correct. So we'll have to figure out a way to do that, and maybe there's ways of modifying the event, modifying the locations we use, being more creative with our space. I sidetracked myself. Yes, sir.
Hey, thanks, Eric. Just a question. I know there's a few more gardens. You talked about land acquisition. I know it's right around 36 acres. How much more land do you need to potentially add to the gardens and add additional, garden features?
Yeah, that's a great question. Bill Reith asked, we have 36 acres now. How much more is expected for the expansion? Part of what we're needing expansion for is parking. Right now, we're very, very fortunate to have Dometic owning the property that's to the north and the east right there of Simonton and Maine. We do not take for granted that could be gone anytime. So we're looking to add just a few acres of parking. And we know we'll need that for some special events, but we're always going to maintain really good relationships with our neighbors. That's part of what my job is and part of what I really enjoy doing. Gardens in the garden that need to be still funded. We have the celebration garden. We also have the memorial garden, which is what I was going to mention. This project does not, is not incorporating the memorial garden. And the memorial garden is a niche, a columbarium niche wall. It's going to be beautiful. It is something that will be a fundraiser for the garden and our endowment. It is not included in this $15 million that will be done separately. And does that answer your question, Bill? Probably plus.
Do you have plans besides parking for actual expansion of the garden itself?
No, that's really not part of the master plan. The master plan, garden wise, was to be within that 36 acres. Originally, the plan included the Selmer building, which is now Garden View Senior Apartments. That was an acquisition that never happened, and I personally am actually happy for that in some ways, what I've learned in Elkr about that building and the history of that building, as well as the residents who live there, who love having Wellfield as their neighbor, and we love having neighbors there. But no, that's sort of where the parking was. We do have a bit still of a challenge and a couple of options for the administrative and horticulture center, but that's a relatively small space. Anthony, one more question.
That was the same, was you're sort of chewing away at all the places you would otherwise be having major events.
Correct. But keep in mind, these are event spaces. So, you know, the event garden where we do the concerts now, the celebration garden where we sort of do those are spaces that are intended to have space and tables and chairs and tents. So we'll continue to use them. They just might have to be a little more broken up.
Quick question.
Yes, Dave.
The property on the west side of Christiana Creek included in the garden?
Yeah, it is. That's a great question to clarify. That all of the acreage that's inside the 36 acres and west of Christiana Creek, we have that designated on the master plan for what we call the wetland conservation garden, which is another space that is yet to be funded that I forgot to mention, Bill. So thanks, Dave. That's a good, that is part of our acreage. So right now, the part that you get to explore is really only about 2/3 of the garden's actual space. I'll hang around for a few minutes. Thanks all so much. I know we went a couple minutes over. Thanks to those of you online for joining us today, and go have a great rest of the week. This is where Eric normally comes back up and rings the bell. So I'm here. I will ring the bell. Rotary's adjourned. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks everybody online.